Mom, could you just do me a quick favor and check your email? Michael was leaning against the kitchen counter, his work badge from the courthouse still clipped to his belt. It was Tuesday, and I had just come home from a 10-hour shift at the pharmacy. My feet were throbbing in a way that made me want to stand still for the rest of the year. I haven't even taken my shoes off, Michael, I said, though I was already reaching for my phone in my scrub pocket. It'll take 10 seconds. The leasing office said they sent the guarantor link to you, so if you just click confirm and upload a pay stub, we can lock in the place by Friday. I stopped. I looked at him, then back at the screen. The guarantor link? Yeah, for the apartment on Glenwood. I didn't agree to be a guarantor, I said. We talked about you looking for a place, and we talked about your budget, but we never talked about me signing for it. Michael shifted his weight. He didn't look at me. He looked at the toaster. I knew you would. You always say you want me to have a place of my own. I just put your name down so they wouldn't give the unit to someone else. It's just a formality to get the application through. A formality is a signature on a guest book, I said. A guarantor is a legal promise to pay your rent if you can't. I can pay it, he said. I'm a clerk now. I have a salary. Then why do you need a guarantor? He didn't answer that. He just repeated, it's just to lock it in. Friday is the deadline. Kyle came into the room then, carrying a stack of mail. He's a loan processor at the credit union, so he spends his entire day looking at the kind of risk Michael was currently asking me to absorb. He didn't say anything at first, just set the mail on the table and started sorting it into neat piles, bills, flyers, personal. He's always been the one who handles the digital filing for the house and the insurance renewals. I can navigate the pharmacy software just fine. But when it comes to our own household portals, I usually just ask him to handle it because I can't remember which password has the exclamation point. You put her down already? Kyle asked. I had to, Michael said. The market is moving fast. If I waited to have a full sit-down meeting about it, the place would be gone. He's just trying to get out on his own, Amanda, Kyle said softly. He didn't look at me. He was focused on a utility bill. I felt that familiar pull in my chest. 3 years ago, when Kyle had been out for 2 months with that back injury and couldn't work, Michael had stepped up. He'd taken over the grocery bills and handled the yard work without being asked, acting like a man of 30 instead of 21. It had been a genuine relief, and I knew Kyle still felt a kind of permanent debt toward him for it. Whenever Michael pushed a boundary now, Kyle tended to treat it as a withdrawal from a credit account Michael had built up during that one good year. I don't care about the market, I said. I care that my name is on a legal document I haven't seen. It's just a link, Mom. Just click it. I opened the email. It was from a property management group. The subject line was, Action Required. Guarantor Verification for Michael Ford. I clicked the link, and it took me to a portal. It asked for my social security number, my employer's address, and a PDF of my last 2 pay stubs. I stared at the screen. I thought maybe it was just a reference check. Some places use the word guarantor loosely. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the upload button. I wanted him to have the apartment. I wanted the house to feel quiet again, to not have to worry about whose turn it was to take out the trash or why the laundry was sitting in the washer for 3 days. Is it just a reference? I asked. Basically, Michael said. I almost did it. I almost uploaded the stubs just to stop the tension in the room. But as I scrolled down to the bottom of the page, there was a Terms and Conditions box. I clicked the drop-down. It explicitly stated that the guarantor was jointly and severally liable for the full term of the lease, including damages and unpaid rent. This isn't a reference, I said. This is a full liability lease. It's the only way they'll take someone with a short work history, Michael said, his voice getting tighter. I've been at the court for 6 months. They don't see that as enough. If you don't do this, I can't move. Then you find a place that doesn't require a guarantor, I said. Those places are dumps, Mom. You know that. I don't know what the apartments on Glenwood look like, I replied. Kyle finally looked up. Amanda, he's already told them you're the one. If you back out now, it looks bad on the application. It might make him look unreliable to the landlord. He is being unreliable, I said. He lied on an application. I didn't lie, Michael said. I assumed. You assumed my credit and my income were yours to use as a safety net. The room went quiet. Michael looked at the floor. Kyle went back to the mail. The silence wasn't the kind that leads to an apology. It was the kind that just waits for the other person to give in. I knew if I clicked that button, the fighting would stop. Michael would move out, Kyle would be. I didn't click the button. I locked my phone and set it face down on the granite. No, it's laminate, the fake stone we picked because it was cheaper, and I walked out of the kitchen. I didn't want to be the one to break the silence, but I didn't want to be the one to end it by giving in, either. Wednesday was a blur of insurance rejections and angry patients at the pharmacy. We were short-staffed again, and the pharmacist was leaning on me to handle the prior authorizations while also managing the drive-through. By the time I clocked out at 6, my head was pounding. All I could think about was the look on Michael's face. That mixture of entitlement and genuine panic. He really did want to move, and he really did believe that my credit was just another tool in his kit, like a hammer or a screwdriver. When I got home, the house was too quiet. Kyle was in the den, and Michael was in his room. I went into the kitchen to start a pot of coffee, even though it was late. As I walked past the hallway, I heard Michael's voice. He was on the phone, his voice low and hurried. I know, Michael was saying. The stubs are coming. My mom just had a long shift. She's probably just tired. But the guarantor part is a lock. She's already seen the link. I stopped. I leaned my shoulder against the wall, listening. No, the deposit is handled, Michael continued. My dad said he'd cover the first month's gap if the application took too long. We're good on the move-in funds. I just need the verification to clear so I can sign the lease tomorrow. I frowned. The first month's gap? We hadn't talked about any gap. Michael had told me he had his own savings for the deposit. I stepped further into the hall, my heart starting to thud. Yeah, Michael said, sounding more confident now. I'll have the confirmation sent by tomorrow morning. I've got it under control. He hung up. A moment later, he stepped out of his room, nearly colliding with me. He jumped, his eyes wide. I didn't know you were there, he said. Who was that? Just the leasing agent, he said, dodging my gaze. Just confirming the timeline. What gap are you talking about, Michael? What first month's gap? He hesitated, shifting his weight from foot to foot. I'm a little short on the actual move-in cash because of the application fees and the utility deposits. I just asked Dad to help out a bit. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal when you're telling a stranger that I'm on board with things I haven't even heard of, I said. And since when is Dad covering your gap? He said he would, Michael said. He told me yesterday. I walked into the den. Kyle was sitting in his recliner, a spreadsheet open on his laptop. He didn't look up immediately, but I could tell he knew I was there by the way his shoulders tightened. Did you tell Michael you'd cover his move-in gap? I asked. Kyle sighed and finally looked at me. He was stressed, Amanda. He's worried he's going to lose the place. I told him I'd handle the difference if he got short. Without asking me? It's my money too, Kyle said, though his voice lacked conviction. And he did a lot for us a few years ago. I just told him it was a done deal so he could stop spiraling. You told him it was a done deal, I repeated. You promised him the money, and you told him I was the guarantor. All without a single conversation with me. I just wanted to help him get his foot in the door, Kyle said. He went back to his laptop, the clicking of the keys sounding like a shutter closing. He's 24. He needs to get out of the house. If we just push him a little, he'll be gone by next week. By then, I knew this wasn't just Michael's impulse. It was a coordinated effort to move him out by any means necessary. And the means happened to be my legal and financial liability. They had created a shortcut around my consent because it was easier than actually talking to me about the risk. I went back to the kitchen and sat down. I felt a strange kind of exhaustion that went deeper than the pharmacy shift. I thought about the terms and conditions I'd read on the portal. Joint and several liability. If Michael lost his job at the court, or if he decided he didn't like the apartment on Glenwood and just stopped paying, the landlord wouldn't come to him first. They'd come to me. Thursday morning, I woke up to a text from Michael. Hey, the agent says if the link isn't confirmed by noon, they have to offer the unit to the next person on the list. Please just do it. I didn't reply. I went to work. I spent 8 hours counting pills and arguing with insurance companies. I thought about how Kyle handled the house. How he was the one who knew exactly when the water filter needed changing, and how to navigate the complex tax portals. He was competent, reliable, and completely avoiding the conflict in his own living room. When I got home at 5:30, Michael was sitting at the kitchen table. He wasn't leaning or lounging. He was sitting straight, his face pale. I lost it, he said. I stopped in the doorway. Lost what? The apartment. The leasing agent called. They gave the unit to someone else at noon. Kyle came in behind me, his face falling. What? I thought you had the guarantor part handled. I didn't, Michael snapped, finally looking at Kyle. I told them she was doing it, but she never clicked the link. Kyle looked at me. There was no anger in his eyes, just a sort of bewildered disappointment, as if I had failed a simple task he'd assigned me. Amanda, why didn't you just do it? Kyle asked. Now he has to start the whole search over. I didn't agree to it, I said. But we talked about him moving. We talked about him finding a place, I said. We didn't talk about me signing a legal contract for a place I've never seen, for a rent price I haven't vetted, while you promise money behind my back. Michael stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You just sabotaged me, Michael yelled, his voice cracking. I had it. I actually had a place, and you just decided to be difficult for the sake of it. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, feeling the weight of the pharmacy shift still pressing into my shoulders. I didn't sabotage you, Michael. I refused to sign a contract I didn't agree to. There is a huge difference. It's the same thing by then, he shouted. He looked at Kyle, expecting an ally. Dad, tell her how this works. Kyle looked between us, his expression pained. He hated when the house felt like a courtroom. Amanda, maybe we can still call the agent? See if there's another unit? Or maybe if we just, I don't know, put up a larger deposit up front to offset the guarantor risk? No, I said. The word was small, but it felt like a wall. No more secret deposits, no more gap money, and absolutely no more of my credit. Michael let out a sound of pure frustration and stormed back into his room, slamming the door hard enough to make the pictures in the hallway rattle. I waited for the echo to die down. Then I looked at Kyle. He was still standing there, looking like he wanted to apologize for something he hadn't even done yet. "You can't just leave him hanging like that," Kyle whispered. "He's already in a state. He's in a state because he tried to trick me into a legal obligation," I replied. "And you helped him. Why, Kyle, why did you tell him it was a done deal?" Kyle sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "Because I remember when he paid for the groceries for 2 months while my back was out. I felt like I owed him a win. He's struggling to find his footing, Amanda. The court job is a start, but it's not a lot of money. Being a good son 3 years ago doesn't give him a lifetime pass to lie to us," I said, "and it doesn't give you the right to spend our joint savings without talking to me." For the next few days, the house was a frozen wasteland. Michael stopped coming into the kitchen when we were there. He'd wait until he heard the shower stop or the TV go off before he'd emerge to scavenge for food. I could feel the pull in my chest, that familiar, aching need to fix it. I wanted to go into his room, tell him I loved him, and offer to help him find a different place, maybe one where I'd actually be comfortable signing. I wanted to erase the tension and bring back the easy, superficial peace we'd had. But every time I felt that urge, I remembered the terms and conditions box. I remembered the phrase, jointly, and several liability. I realized that my tendency to rescue him wasn't an act of love. It was a way to avoid the discomfort of watching him fail. By absorbing the risk, I was making it possible for him to remain reckless. On Sunday afternoon, I found Kyle in the home office. He had a folder open on his desk, the one where he kept the house deeds and the insurance policies. He was typing something on his laptop, his face set in a grim line of professional focus. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I've been looking into the local ordinances," Kyle said. He didn't look up. "Since we don't have a formal lease with Michael, and he doesn't pay rent, he's technically a guest. But after this long, the law treats it more like a tenancy at will. If we want him out by a certain date, we have to give him proper written notice. 30 days is the standard in Huntsville." I felt a surge of gratitude. This was the Kyle I relied on, the man who handled the logistics, the one who knew the rules of the system. He wasn't avoiding the conflict anymore. He was processing it. "You're actually doing it?" I asked. "I think we have to," Kyle said. "He's too comfortable here, and he's too entitled to our help. If we don't set a hard date, he'll just keep almost finding an apartment until he's 30. He printed out a simple formal letter. It wasn't mean. It just stated that Michael needed to vacate the premises by the end of the following month. We sat together at the kitchen table and waited for Michael to come home from his shift. When he walked in, Kyle didn't hesitate. He handed him the paper. Michael read it slowly, his brow furrowing. "What is this? A joke?" "It's a notice, Michael," Kyle said, his voice steady. "You have 30 days. We love you, but the setup here has ended. You need to find a place that fits your budget. One that doesn't require your mother to risk her credit." Michael looked at me, his eyes searching for the crack in my armor. "Mom, you're okay with this? You're just going to kick me out?" "I'm not kicking you out," I said. "I'm giving you a deadline. You're 24, Michael. You can handle a 30-day window." The next 2 weeks were grueling. Michael tried everything. He tried the silent treatment. Then he tried the "I'm so depressed I can't function" routine. And finally, he tried to find a new apartment. This time, he actually showed me the listings. He found a small, dated studio on the other side of town. It was a far cry, from the luxury complex on Glenwood. The carpets looked tired in the photos, and the rent was significantly lower. "I can afford this one," Michael told us on a Tuesday evening. "But the deposit is $800, and I'm still a bit short because of the application fees from the last place. I just need a loan. Just $500. I'll pay you back in 3 months." I looked at Kyle. This was the moment. The gap was back, and the pressure to rescue was screaming in my ears. I could see the desperation in Michael's face, the fear that he might actually have nowhere to go. It would be so easy to just write the check and end the stress. Kyle looked at me, then at Michael. He remembered the groceries from 3 years ago, but he also looked at the formal notice still pinned to the refrigerator. "Ask your savings account, Michael," Kyle said. Michael stared at him, stunned. "What? You've been working for 6 months," Kyle said. "You have a salary. If you're $500 short on a deposit for a studio, you need to figure out how to bridge that gap yourself. Maybe sell some of your gear or take some overtime at the court. But we aren't lending you the move-in money." Michael stood up. His face flushed. He didn't yell this time. He just looked at us with a cold, distant kind of resentment. He turned and walked back to his room, the sound of his door closing far quieter than it had been before. I sat there in the silence, my heart hammering, watching the fallout happen in real time and doing absolutely nothing to stop it. The last week of the month felt like a slow-motion collision. Michael stopped arguing. He stopped asking for money. He just existed in the house like a ghost who was angry at the walls. He spent most of his time in his room, and the only sound we heard was the occasional thud of a cardboard box hitting the floor. I spent my shifts at the pharmacy in a state of perpetual hesitation. Every time I saw a patient struggle with a copay or a confusing insurance form, I felt that old, reflexive urge to step in and smooth things over, to find a workaround that made everyone happy. I'd catch myself halfway through a sentence. "Maybe we can call the provider," and then I'd stop. I reminded myself that the workaround was usually just me taking on someone else's stress to buy a few minutes of peace. At home, Kyle was the one managing the logistics. He'd already mapped out the move-out day, calculating how many trips Michael's sedan would take to get his things to the studio. Kyle had even bought a roll of heavy-duty packing tape and a stack of markers, leaving them on the kitchen table with a note that said, "For Michael." It was a kind gesture, but it was also a boundary. He was providing the tools, but he wasn't doing the work. I, on the other hand, didn't know where to start. I offered to help Michael pack his closet, but when I walked into his room, I realized I had no idea how he organized his life. There were piles of electronics, haphazard stacks of court documents, and clothes that seemed to have their own ecosystem. I stood there for a minute, feeling useless, before he told me to just leave the room. "I've got it, Mom," he said. He didn't look at me. He was wrapping a computer monitor in an old towel. I just thought, just leave it. The morning of the move was a humid Tuesday. Michael had been up since 6, loading the car in bursts. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he was moving with a heavy, sluggish sort of determination. Around 10, he came into the kitchen. He didn't look at us. He just looked at the counter. The landlord for the studio. Michael started, his voice flat. "He says the money order for the remaining balance has to be in his hand before he gives me the keys. He won't take a digital transfer for the last part of the deposit." Kyle looked up from his coffee. "I thought you had that sorted." "I do," Michael said, "but the money order place is closed for a holiday or something. I can't get the exact amount in the form he wants until tomorrow morning." So you can't move in today? Kyle asked. No. Michael shifted his weight. I could see the calculation happening in his head. He looked at me, and for a second I saw the 21-year-old who had helped us with the groceries, the boy who had been so reliable during Kyle's recovery. The pull in my chest was almost physical. I wanted to tell him I'd just write a check, that we could figure out the repayment later, that he shouldn't have to spend another night in a house where he felt unwelcome. I just need a few $100s to cover the gap until tomorrow, Michael said. I'll pay you back the second I get my next check. I can't stay here another night, and I can't get the keys without the cash. I felt my hand move toward my purse on the chair. I actually touched the leather. No, Kyle said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was final. You have a car. You can find another place to get a money order, or you can call the landlord and explain the situation. But we aren't the bank today, Michael. Michael let out a sharp, jagged breath. I'm literally standing here with my life in boxes, and you're talking about money orders. We gave you 30 days, Kyle said. The deadline is today. Michael didn't yell. He didn't storm out. He just stood there, looking at the laminate countertop, and I knew he was actually stuck. He had spent so much of his energy trying to shortcut the process, lying about the guarantor, assuming the gap money would just appear, that he hadn't actually planned for the friction of reality. He spent the next 3 hours in a state of controlled panic. He was on the phone, his voice urgent and pleading. I listened from the hallway, hearing him talk to a friend, then someone else, then someone he sounded like he didn't even like. I know, Michael was saying. I just need 400. I'll give you my PlayStation. I'll give it to you right now. Just please. I felt a wave of nausea. The PlayStation had been a graduation gift from his grandparents. It was the one thing he actually loved. Watching him trade it away just to secure a place to sleep felt cruel. It felt like I was watching a car wreck in slow motion. And I was the only one with a fire extinguisher. But I was choosing to keep it in the holster. Around 2 p.m, Michael came back into the kitchen. He was carrying a heavy black box, the console and the controllers. He set it on the table with a dull thud. I got the money, he said. A friend is coming to pick this up, and he's giving me the cash for the deposit. Good, Kyle said. He didn't sound triumphant. He just sounded relieved that the logistics were finally clicking into place. I'm leaving now, Michael said. He didn't ask. Michael didn't say goodbye. He just turned and walked toward the driveway. I followed him out to the porch, my arms crossed over my chest. The humidity was already thick, the kind of Alabama heat that makes your clothes stick to your back the second you step outside. He was shoving the last of the boxes into the back of his sedan, pushing and jamming them in with a desperation that looked painful. He had a few plastic bins and a floor lamp that kept sliding, knocking into the other boxes every time he tried to shut the trunk. You're missing a box, I said, pointing toward the garage. He stopped, his face flushing. What? There's a box of winter clothes and those old textbooks by the workbench. I saw them when I was looking for the vacuum. Michael looked at the garage, then back at his car, which was already packed to the ceiling. He didn't move for a moment. He just stared at the trunk, his shoulders slumped. By then, I knew I'd assumed he had everything staged in his room, but he'd left a whole corner of the garage untouched. I'd tried to help him organize a few days ago, but I couldn't figure out which boxes were priority and which were just junk, and he'd told me to stay out of it. Now, it was his problem. I can't fit it, he muttered. There's no way that fits. You'll have to make another trip, I said. He turned to look at me. The resentment was still there, but it was mixed with a sudden, sharp anxiety. He looked at his watch, then at the car. "I can't make another trip, Mom. The landlord is meeting me at the studio at 3. He's got another showing at 4, so if I'm not there to sign the final paperwork and hand over the money order, he might not hold the keys." I didn't. Part 5 continuation. I didn't. 460-580 words. First-person narrative, Amanda Ford. Concrete action, brief dialogue, one ordinary detail. End on a complete sentence. No restarting, summarizing, outlining headings, or repeating existing sentences. Same scene, immediate consequence. Narrator, Amanda Ford, 51, pharmacy tech. Husband, Kyle Ford, 48, loan processor. Son, Michael Ford, 24, court intake clerk. Core conflict. Adult child overrules narrator's home labor marriage. Plot track. Financial commitment, guarantor issue. Outcome. Michael moves out after a deadline. Ending direction. The person who made the private choice absorbs a practical consequence while the narrator watches without rescuing. Specific constraint. No weeks later. No final test. No big family meeting. End before the day is over. Michael is packing his car. He's stressed. He's forgotten a box of winter clothes, textbooks in the garage. His car is full. He has a strict deadline with the landlord, 3 p.m. He is looking at Amanda for a solution, likely a ride or a promise to save the box. The prompt ends with I didn't. I didn't needs to be completed. I didn't offer to drive the box over. I didn't promise to keep it safe. Michael's panic. He can't fit the box, he can't make another trip, and he's terrified of losing the keys. Amanda's internal struggle. The urge to rescue versus the decision to hold the boundary. Kyle's role. He's inside or nearby, maintaining the boundary. The ordinary detail, something mundane. A weed. A bug. A specific household item. The climax. Michael has to choose between his belongings and his deadline. He has to absorb the cost of his poor planning. The I didn't completion. I didn't offer to drive it over for him, and I didn't promise to store it in the garage for the next few months. Action. Michael tries to rearrange the car. He's sweating. He's frantic. Dialogue, brief, tense. Ordinary detail. A stray piece of packing tape stuck to his shoe, or a specific weed in the driveway. Let's go with a piece of packing tape. The resolution. Michael leaves the box. He accepts the loss of his things to meet the deadline he almost missed. Drafting text. I didn't offer to drive it over for him, and I didn't promise to keep it in the garage for the next few months. I just stood there, watching a piece of clear packing tape flutter on the bottom of his sneaker, catching the light as he shifted his weight. "Can't you just take it?" he asked, his voice rising. "It's just one box. You could drop it off tomorrow." "I'm working tomorrow, Michael," I said, and we agreed that today was the day. The house needs to be clear. He looked at the trunk, then at the garage, then back at me. He started pulling things out of the car, a bag of gym clothes, a stack of pillows, trying to create a gap that didn't exist. He was breathing hard, the humidity making his t-shirt cling to his chest in dark patches. He looked like he was fighting a losing battle with a puzzle that had too many pieces. "I can't just leave my textbooks," he groaned. "I need those for the certification exam in January." "Then you should have packed them on Monday," I replied. I felt the familiar twitch in my fingers, the desire to just grab the box and throw it in my SUV, but I kept my hands locked behind my back. For years, I had been the one to find the missing shoe, to remember the library book, to bridge the gap between his intentions and his actions. If I did it now, I was just telling him that the deadline was a suggestion and my boundaries were negotiable. Kyle stepped out onto the porch. He didn't say anything. He just leaned against the railing, watching. He wasn't gloating, but he was present, a silent reminder that the coalition had shifted. Michael looked at his watch again. It was 2:15. The drive to the studio took 20 minutes, and he still had to stop at the money order place to finalize the payment. The math was simple, and for the first time, Michael was the only one responsible for solving it. He stopped pulling things out of the car. He stood still for a long moment, staring at the garage door. Then, with a sharp, frustrated exhale, he slammed the trunk shut. The sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood. "Fine," he spat. "Just leave the box. I don't care." He didn't look at me as he climbed into the driver's seat.